Thank you so much, Liz, and thank you all to you all for coming as well this evening. I just want to say right from the off, I helped with the set dressing. I will take good money for the Dream Team Harchester United shirt, less money for the Leyton Orient one, and even less more for the Nottingham Forest one. But there's a good array there. Thank you to Sapphire and Charlie for coming as well to join us on this celebration of what it's like to be a modern football fan. And I suppose to kind of really start off and lay the cards on the table. Initially, when I was thinking about what it's like being a modern day football fan, on Monday evening I was sat at home, just at home, and I got a text from a mate on WhatsApp, and it said, "Mate, are you watching the Plymouth versus Exeter game?" And I replied to him saying no, because it would be mad to be watching that game on a Monday evening. I'm not a Plymouth fan, he's not a Plymouth fan, I'm not an Exeter fan, he's not an Exeter fan. Neither of the teams that we support are even in League One. But he said, it's a belter, you've got to get it on. I was like, okay, fine. I put it on, and he was right. 2-2, it finished 4-2 to Plymouth. We both agreed it was an excellent game of football. It was enthralling. It was passionate. It was raining at home park. It was everything that you wanted to experience as a football fan. And it's one of those moments where you think, I'm in this. I'm into this, and I'm in deep as well. But it really kind of changed my perception of what it's like being a modern football fan, because I realised that at that moment, when I first grew up, none of those things were really available to me. Sky Sports hadn't been invented or wasn't on air at that point. WhatsApp wasn't a thing, obviously, either. But at that moment, I was able to communicate with a friend about a game that bothered neither of us, but still wanted to get involved with. And I think it's in that spirit that we wanted to start this evening with Sapphire and Charlie. To start off with, Sapphire, why are you a football fan? What was the genesis of that story?
I think football for me has always been a place to hide away and be me. I started playing when I was 7. I'm a millennial now, no ages, but I'm a millennial. And I've had to fight to play football. I grew up in Leeds, West Yorkshire, yes, that's rare. And yeah, I had to fight to play, and it was the thing that gave me the most joy when I was young. And even to this day, being a fan, it's a way to like escape and to relax. And I'm quite a fidgety person, but when I'm watching YouTube Premier League highlights, I just watch and relax. It's one of them things that I rarely just sit still, but when I'm watching football, there's kind of like a relaxation to it that just calms me down. So I think that's why I'm a fan. And then I'm very lucky to support Liverpool FC. So I've got loads of things to shout about being a fan. You know, why would you not want to be a fan of Liverpool? So I'm really proud. And I've always supported Liverpool, by the way. I'm not a glory hunter. So I was there in the Downing days, by the way. So yeah, I'm lucky to be a Liverpool fan, and I think there's loads of things to celebrate about being a Liverpool fan.
Fantastic. And Charlie, how did your journey start?
So weirdly, everyone assumes that my dad, like a lot of people I think get into it through their dad or something like that. He was not into it at all. My grandpa was very into it and played football. And my older brother was really into it. And I remember going to games when I was like 5 or 6 and it being a little bit of a chore. I think I was just too young. Then aged about 7, something just clicked and I became completely obsessed with it. It was like this wonderland I was stepping into. I just found it incredible. And that's never really left, I don't think. Like, there's just so much to it. The storylines, the numbers, the passion, it just completely hooked me in. And I had I think then quite a compulsive personality. It was just like, oh my God, there's endless things you can read about and watch and all of that. And and from there I just always wanted to sort of write about it and get into it, and that's what happened.
Sapphire, what you mentioned about it actually calming you down, which I think is the opposite reaction of how a lot of people approach football. But has your relationship with football changed throughout your life as well? Have you found that it's now something which is just a part of your routine, or has your relationship with the game changed for the better?
I think when I was a bit younger, I was playing a lot. I used to play for Leeds, so I was always training and things like that. And I used to watch the whole of the match I don't really watch the whole of match anymore. I actually watch highlights. I think my energy has gone more into grassroots and more into the women's game and maybe trying to get more women involved in the game. So I think definitely I don't watch as much football as I used to. I think more I'm now trying to think of ways how I can help to make it more inclusive for people.
And Charlie, you cover Tottenham Hotspur for The Athletic as well. Have you seen a change in their fans or a change in the way that Premier League fans are approaching the game? I mean, I mentioned Spurs just because I think for probably pound for pound, they have the best stadium in the world, but also their fans now expect much more from their club.
Yeah, I think it's been completely transformed. And I was talking about this with a colleague of mine, Michael Cox, who wrote a good piece. And I had a similar thought on why it is that I think fans now, it's more up and down than it used to be, because there's so much to consume about your club that's tailored specifically to you. Like, that's the whole Athletic model. You have a dedicated club correspondent, because fans care so much. So after you've won a big game, if you're a Spurs fan, there are double figures podcasts dedicated to just your club talking about that game. You can wallow in that win for hours and hours and hours. You can watch the highlights, you can watch Match of the Day, you can read articles on various different places. Like, when I started following football, there would be, I remember compulsively, you'd wait until the morning, you'd have recorded Match of the Day, or I was so young, you'd watch it, there'd be a few hundred words newspaper report, and that would be it. And I think there are sort of pros and cons to that, because obviously when you have won a big game, you want to just wallow and bask in it. But I think it can sort of raise expectations and then lower them sort of in an unrealistic way. Whereas I think before, if you'd lost a game, you'd lose it, you'd sort of move on. A week later, you'd go to the next game. Whereas now I think there's so much noise that I think that's why you have Spurs fans, some of whom are already sick of Antonio Conte, who has come in and in a year has done, if you take a step back, has done an absolutely unbelievable job. But there are going to be bumps in the road. And in each of those bumps, you're going to have a lot of people saying, this is awful. In the same way, when things go well, you're going to say, like, we're the best team in Europe. Like, we should be beating everyone. So I just think it's so much more up and down now than it used to be.
It's interesting about the idea of it being up and down, because my relationship with football personally is that I grew up and continue to support a team up until incredibly recently who would win a third of their games, would draw a third of their games, and lose a third of their games. And the reason why I know that is because during the pandemic, I thought I'm going to chart all of the games that Leyton Orient have played since my first game there in 1999, and it literally worked out. It was 36%, 34%. What's the other percentage? 30%. And I thought, this is an incredibly healthy way to approach football fandom, because I don't really expect a lot from them. I expect the odd win, the odd draw, the odd loss. But to your point, this fluctuation of it being up and down, do you think that's been exacerbated by kind of expectations and the growth of, I don't know, sports media and social media?
Totally, because I just think there's so much more space to fill. There's so much more noise. You have to have, if you lose a tight home game, it's hard now to just be like, you win some, you lose some. It has to be like, but why did we lose that home game to Everton? What went wrong? They've got this issue with the left back. We need to get a better left. There's so much granular analysis. And I want to ask you, like, would you change that? Because this is something I was thinking about recently. I know so few people who would actually change the team they support, despite the fact that a lot of people support teams that are completely hopeless. Football fandom seems to me, and I'd be interested if anyone in the audience would regrets their choice of team. Does anyone? Does anyone think, I wish I supported Man City now?
I definitely do not.
There is one Man City convert. Anyone else? It's just interesting.
Once you're a Carlisle fan, you're always a Carlisle fan.
Yeah. And there was a fine 3-2 win against Carlisle a couple of weeks ago for the O's as well. But that's a very personal joke between Orient and Carlisle. I think you're right. I mean, from my point of view, absolutely no way. Orient were my local team, and like I said, I feel like I've got a healthy relationship with the idea of winning anything, and I don't expect it, and so it makes it, I think, even better when it does happen. Sapphire, over the course of your life, when you go to matches yourself, or indeed if you play in them, have match days as a fan changed for you as well? In so much as, do you find football a more inclusive, more welcoming environment, or is it still got a way to go?
I think the women's game, I mean, I've been playing for quite a while. Obviously, the women's game has come on so much. And I would say is more inclusive. I play for Romance FC, who are based in Hackney, East London. We're like a women and non-binary football team. We've been going for about, I think maybe up to 10 years. And that started to help women that were working full-time in London get into football. I've always played football, but in my team, I'm actually a rarity. I've been playing since I was 7, whereas a lot of the women who are millennials or Gen Z, they weren't allowed to play, or there was nowhere to play. Like I said before, I've had to fight to play. So I would say in the women's game, it's definitely becoming... There's so many stories in women's football where you'll meet someone who's like 28 and she used to play until she was 10, and then she went to high school and then it wasn't cool, and then she goes to uni and then she plays a little bit and then she moves to London and she meets like a team like Romance and she starts playing again. There's always like a gap generally in women's football. And then I would say in terms of like, I don't go to lots of male football matches, but I went to the Women's Euros at Wembley, and one thing I will add is the price of food and drink. Oh my God. I think a bottle of water was like £7.50 or something like that.
It was. I was there also. And I was there at Bramall Lane for the semi-final, and it was cheaper. And you're like, this water can't be sourced from different, like, again, another personal grievance. But have you seen the difference, or have you seen people wanting to come and play, or just people coming off the back of the Women's Euros final?
Of course, yeah. It's such a shame that it is the way it is, but it's so real, the lack of physical activity in young women when they become teenagers. And I think what happened this year with the World Cup has given so many people so much confidence to believe that they can play football, which is so weird to say, but there is this feeling that, that it isn't normal. So I do think that since the World Cup happens, people were so happy. I was there with my team and everyone was just like, wow, like it happened. Because obviously everyone knows there was a ban, women's football, there was a huge ban for years where women couldn't play. And I've got friends that are a bit older, women that are a bit older, who remember that period. So yeah, this summer was hopefully life-changing, but we need to see the funding. I'm not sure what's going on with the funding, but there needs to actually be money that's put in to the grassroots. Yeah,
it's a really important point about there's been 2 events essentially over the last 16 months, Charlie, that I think shows this dichotomy of being a football fan. Because in summer of 2021, the men get to the final of the European Championship, and I think it's fair to say that the fans there disgraced themselves. They really did. They broke through the barriers at Wembley. It earned England a 2-game ban from having supporters in the stadium, and it was a really shameful event. And then this summer, when the women got through to the final and won the final, it was a really joyous event. I was there myself, and it was a real celebration of football. Now, of course, it's going to happen because you win a game, but the events of Wembley happened prior to the game as well, and it got me thinking about this idea that I think actually 30 or 40 years ago, you could probably say that this one particular group of people are the football fans. But football fandom now has become a bit more fractured in so much as there is no one homogenous mass of football fans. Would you agree with that? Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's football. I mean, when I started going to football in sort of the mid-90s, that was when, famously there was the Italian 90, and that was a bit of a turning point of how football was perceived. I mean, football was obviously seen in that kind of 80s Thatcher era as the sport of yobs and thugs, and hooliganism was so pervasive. Then it became obviously a lot more sanitized in the 90s, and then became pretty much ubiquitous. I think now, talk about what a typical football fan is really hard to do. I mean, I think the demographics have changed massively. And, some would say in a negative way, because people have been priced out of it. You talked about the price of drinks and things like that, but the price of tickets as well is prohibitive for a lot of people. And I do think it's a shame, because something like that, I defend football, the players, because I think they get a hard time with the fans as well. But then you have something like the Men's Euros final,
And that is that's indefensible. And you can see why then a lot of people would be put off going and thinking that match going is not for me. And that's a real shame as well, because going to games, especially as a young person, is so transformative. And you talk, for participation, getting people to play. Mm-hmm. And I was, as a boy growing up, playing football was so easy. There were no barriers, anything like that. But it was going to games. And I went to a game in year 96. And things that you're never going to forget that. And that's just like, that just completely hooks you in.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to say off the back of that, when I walked out of Wembley after the Women's Euros, there was all these police officers on horses, and we were just like, you don't need to be here. Everybody was so happy, and it was just full of women, and it was just like, oh, you don't realise, like, we're not like that. Like, it was a waste of police money. But I also wonder if fan behaviour is also reflective of, like, economic and political times. I mean, the tensions around the world after the pandemic, was that reflected in fan behaviour as well?
Yeah, it's interesting. And Charlie, just going back on to your point, I do wonder if it's a kind of a maturity of society now that we find ourselves in, because I flip-flop between thinking, we should make these changes in football, but then you see stuff like what happened last summer, and I think actually no, people can't, football fans can't be trusted in some of the changes. But what we have seen in recent years is a return of safe standing, and a lot of this stuff happened post Hillsborough, and they were necessary changes in the 1992 Taylor report, which brought in these raft of changes, but it includes drinking in view of the pitch. Now, I think most people here will know this, but it's amazing the amount of people when you bring someone to a game and you say, "Oh no, you can't drink a beer in view of the pitch." Like, no, you have to down that. And they're like, "What? You're selling it, but you can only drink it in the concourse." Like, yeah. But do you think there's an element of a society maturing and getting to a point where now football fans might be trusted to act like adults?
I don't know, maybe. I mean, I think that Euros final is a kind of like, this is why we can't have nice things moment.
The firework the fireworks.
Yeah, exactly, all that sort of stuff.
We won't put it on the screen, but you can find it on Google.
I would say as well, I do think the drinking in front of the pitch, like I've been to some rugby matches as well, I do think the slight downside with it is everyone becomes so obsessed with getting drinks. You're constantly getting up and down. It becomes a bit too much of a focus. I quite like the fact that at football games, it's this sort of sanctuary from that, where everyone is actually, yes, people might leave early to get a drink or whatever. I think that the key thing with football for me is like the tribalism of football, I think, should be celebrated. I think that's what makes going to live football is amazing, because everyone there cares so much. You go to a lot of sports, and it's a cliche, but it's like, you go, you have a drink, and I kind of think, well, if you need to go and just have a drink, you could go to a park or something. Football is so amazing because firstly, the timings of it are so perfect. It's 45 minutes before you have a break, which is kind of, everyone can sort of has the attention span for that. Most people do. But it's just that balance. Obviously, the Euros final goes too far. But I think, some sports, and the fact that fans are segregated, famously in rugby, the sort of gentleman's game, they can sit together, which I think to a lot of football fans would seem completely bizarre. And I think, yes, that might seem unnatural, but I think that sort of works for the product in some ways. But I don't know, like drinks and seats still feels a little way off.
Yeah, I think it's very much a watch this space, because I know some clubs are piloting schemes, and that will be make or break, I think, for it, because I think you're right. Last summer, the events of last summer, I think may have knocked that down the road a little bit further. Sapphire, you talk about being part of the community as a football fan, but also as part of your Romance FC Sunday League team. Football fans, as Charlie mentioned about tribalism, have the ability to act as incredible communities as well. And we've seen there's now 50 LGBTQ plus fan groups associated with professional clubs in this country, which is a massive increase in the last few years. But there's also where fans can mobilise to bring about real change in the community.
Yeah, so with Liverpool, you can see that they help out people that are struggling to put food on the table. And I feel like that should be an obvious thing to do with the amount of money that's involved in male Premier League football. I feel like that's something that is a given. I remember growing up when with Leeds United, we would get free tickets to go watch Leeds as a kid. Like we'd do like raffles and stuff like that. And that was a chance for me to see football and for me to get a chance. And maybe that was a positive reason why I wanted to continue playing, because I was able to get involved in my city club, which was Leeds.
Do you think it's kind of a necessary gap that people are filling in their lives in terms of just being part of a community? If you're playing for a team, there's a support network around you as well.
Oh, so you think what you're asking people do that as a way to connect, is to join a club? Yeah, I think that can definitely be. Well, when I went to university, I mean, it was a given that I was going to play for the university team, but I definitely think people joined the team at university because they were struggling to find out where they fitted. So I definitely saw that at university. And I think definitely when you move to London, what are you going to do? Maybe you could join a team. Like we train once a week and it's like a Sunday morning and it's like a really lovely, healthy way to like finish your weekend, especially if it's sunny. And I think that kind of thing, that kind of routine and like that happiness and joy and moving your body is definitely something that brings people towards the community that's already there to help keep it growing and building, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and Charlie, I suppose that when you talk about going to games as well, there is something about it that you just kind of can't explain. There's a guy who sits in front of me where I go and watch football. It always just offers you sweets. And it's different. It's different from when you were a kid.
Yeah. In a wholesome way.
But I don't know the guy's name.
Yeah. Well,
but we turn up every week. And we go, we're here just to see the same thing.
Yeah, no, completely. And like the playing element, I've always played, and I love that community is so amazing and so powerful. But yeah, going to games, I had something recently where we've got guys who sit in front of us, have done for 15, 20 years, chat every game in depth, only ever about the football. And I've known this guy for about 15, 20 years. Didn't know his name until a few weeks ago. And we had this thing where we sort of saw each other in the concourse. We were like, oh, do you want to have a drink? Sort of thing. He's like, I'm Dominic, by the way. I was like, yeah, that's weird. I've known you for so long. I never even know. It doesn't matter. And I know that's so hackneyed and cliched or whatever, but it is really true. And we live in our tribes. And actually, that is a very rare instance where all of those things are. The only tribe that matters really is you both support the same football team. Yeah. And that it is an amazingly powerful thing. It
can go the other way, I should mention, because your colleague, Alex Kajelski, I encourage you all to try and find this piece on The Athletic, because in August of this year, he wrote an article which is, I've got it written down. The headline was, "Help, the guy sitting behind me is driving me mad." And a new fan had come and sat behind him, and he doesn't like it. But it can go the other way. But I think you're absolutely right in terms of the thing that is binding you and connecting you all together is your love and support for your team. Sapphire, there's now a flood of content surrounding football. What do you make of kind of what people say online? Because there is an element that can add to the tribalism, but therefore also add to the toxicity of football fandom.
I think some of it is really cool. I can't imagine, like, the amount of things that people create from football culture. I don't know if you've seen that. I saw a sketch of pundits the other day. There's a new show on Andrew Mensah. He's a comedian that I know. Yeah, so he did a sketch and he was Floyd Hasselbank. And then there was two other comedians being two other pundits, I think Roy Keane and Gary Neville. And I was like, I don't think I've ever seen a sketch of football pundits before. So I like the creativity that has come from this mass media around the Premier League, etc. Like, I think it's amazing. And like the street culture, the fashion, I think it's fantastic. In terms of the negativity, it's not something that I focus on. But I just feel like that's always something that's going to happen when there's men fighting. Like, you're always going to have just stupid arguments online in the comments about whatever. Like, that's just part of any kind of culture. As long as it's not violent, I just think that's probably a necessary negative that is going to come from that. But in terms of like loads of social media, I think it's super creative. I think it's super fun, and loads of people are getting opportunities to do like you do multiple podcasts, and people are getting work out of it. And as long as it's healthy, I think it's quite a positive thing, actually.
On the kind of the flood of content, I'm, let's say, occasionally berated because my colleagues here at Tortoise will just be glancing over at my screen, and just on my timeline, goals will just appear. And they appear from nowhere, as everything does on the internet. And they're like, is that strictly work? And now, Charlie, at The Athletic, you can get away with it. Tortoise, less so, I think it's fair to say. But Charlie, your new book kind of taps into the idea of the relationship between fans and the media, but specifically with commentators. Can you just kind of explain where that idea comes from and the way that what we've seen as fans has permeated pretty much our entire lives?
Yeah, I mean, the book came off the back of a podcast I did called Football Cliches, which is about the language of football. And so the book is talking about that. And in the intro to it, it occurred to me, like, I think, because we all, as football fans, everyone could recite at least one piece of football commentary, probably multiple. And you are like entrusting these commentators with narrating some of the most important moments of our lives. Like, you know, for a lot of football fans, these are, like, it's not overstating it to say they're such important memories. And commentators have an amazing ability to improvise in the moment and kind of deliver the perfect line. So the book is kind of a celebration of that. And yeah, I mean, I think for football supporters, the commentators and the media do play such an important part. We have such a pride in our team, and so the way that people talk about us really matters. And I think fans are so increasingly well informed that they now, like, it's not enough for, you know, I think places like The Athletic came out of the fact that on Match of the Day, let's say you support Stoke and you're the last game on, and the analysis, because they just don't have the time, which is completely fair enough, you know, will consist of a kind of Stoke, yeah, they'll be okay this season. You know, like, we want really, really tailored stuff to us because we care so much. And we know, fans know so much themselves, that to learn things is becoming harder and harder. And whether you're a commentator, a writer, a podcaster or whatever, like, they can tell a mile off. So you really have to do your homework. And commentators increasingly now, I think now, they are really, really well informed, and I know they work incredibly hard so that they can deliver that perfect line.
Do you both do the thing that I have in my brain, in that it is now my internal monologue, is football commentary for entirely mundane activities in my life? I'll be doing the washing up, and or you're bringing out something out of the oven, and you go, and in your head is Barry Davis. Oh, that is brilliant. Is it just me? Is it just me?
It's not me.
No, it's definitely me. I definitely do that. I'll be like, oh, he's done it. Like, when I've done something like fairly humdrum. Or what I have this fantasy of, like, if this were doable, I have this of, like, all the goals I've ever scored in 11-a-side being put, like, in one of those football montages, being put to music, and then with, like, Eccleshare, yes, you know, like, all of that. It will never happen, but we can but dream.
To take that one step further, do you do the halftime analysis as well, where you have Alan Hansen's voice in your head going, Butler's got to be doing better there? Or is that just me?
No, I do. I will, after games, sometimes think, like, if the Match of the Day guys got their hands on my performance, you know, and they're, like, picking on someone and be like, look, he's walking, you know, he's off the pedal. I'd be like, God, thank God I'm just hidden away and no one can see.
I want to move on to...
I like that.
We can come back to that. We're loads of that. I want to come to, we're into the last kind of 10 minutes or so, and we'll return to probably something ever so slightly more lighthearted again, but onto the World Cup, because this is now, we're into November. We're into a month that I think a lot of us probably thought might never come about, because the Qatar World Cup being awarded there, it's controversial for so many reasons. But have you considered, as a fan, what you're going to do and how you're approaching the World Cup?
This World Cup feels different to me. It's not just the season that it's been in, but I don't know. I don't feel like I'm getting that much World Cup content. Like, I don't really feel. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a World Cup year. It doesn't. I don't know. I just generally don't feel like there's going to be a World Cup. I just can't really. I can't see it. It doesn't feel like it. I don't feel like I don't know, you know, like the adverts, you might get like a Carlsberg advert, or you know, like them adverts you get for the world. I don't feel like I've seen anything like that, you know, like a legendary, unique, with all the legends in it. I've not seen that. Like, I will be watching the World Cup, but I don't know how religiously I'll be watching it compared to other World Cups. There's just something about it. It just doesn't feel that like it's happening, really.
And to go on to kind of, I think there's so much pressure being put on unnecessarily on fans to kind of do something about the World Cup in terms of, shall I watch it? Shall I boycott it? Do you think it's a shame that kind of those decisions they're out of our hands?
Yeah.
It's not up to us to decide this. This should have been decided at a much higher level.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know much about it, but I do know the accommodation and getting there is like absolute. The prices are absolutely crazy. Like, I don't know who's going to be able to afford to go to the World Cup this year, but it definitely won't be me.
Yeah. And Charlie, similarly to you, these decisions obviously out of football fans' hands. How are you kind of treating it as a fan yourself?
Yeah, I think they are. I mean, of course they are, and there's no. It's not up to fans to make these decisions. But I do think with things like the European Super League collapse, and even now the way managers are sacked, and we saw last week or the week before Steven Gerrard getting sacked by Aston Villa. Once, you know, it's very common. You hear it once the fans turn. I think fans actually do have quite a lot of power. So it's an interesting time for them because I think the Qatar World Cup has felt like a tipping point for a lot of fans. Like it's so completely and obviously and brazenly taking the piss. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. Like we're so
hot there.
Yeah, it's exactly. Well, the fact that they were like, well, clearly you can't play World Cup in summer. Like, no, it'll be fine playing in the summer. It's like, oh no, we're just not. We're just going to do it in the winter and completely disrupt it for everyone. And everyone sort of shrugs their shoulders off the back of a World Cup that was in Russia. Like people are almost. I think the danger is people become apathetic to this sort of thing. You know, FIFA just behaving in that sort of way. But fans have showed, as I say, with Super League and other things, that they do have a lot of power. So I don't know where it goes from here. Myself. Yeah, I completely agree. If I think back normally with World Cups, because it actually has a little bit of space to breathe. So the Premier League and the domestic season, the Champions League finishes, you've got 3 or 4 weeks. You buy your pullouts, you get your wall charts. You're thinking about the World Cup for a few weeks. With this, the season finished, the Premier League season takes a break. A week later, I mean, the World Cup starts in just over 2 weeks.
Doesn't feel like it.
That feels insane. Yeah. Like, it's there and then it stops. The World Cup final is on a Sunday. There are Carabao Cup games on the Wednesday. Like Harry Kane could score the winning penalty for England on Sunday, and then it's like, are you okay for Brentford away in 3 days? It's totally mad, but it's like they're just flogging the players. But you know, what I always think with football, its problem in a way is its greatest success. The product is so amazing that as much as we as fans want to vote with our feet and boycott our team because they're owned by someone we don't like or they have a sponsor we don't like, we also really want to see that new striker. So we're kind of like, you know what, I'm not crazy about the Saudis, but we have signed this quite exciting Swedish guy, so I'm kind of going to park that. And that's kind of a dilemma we all face, and I don't know the solution.
Collective action is obviously is incredibly hard at that type of level, and you know, for fans to petition their respective FAs to call on FIFA to do something about the World Cup is going to be difficult. But you mentioned the European Super League because that was a collective action, pretty much broadly unorganised as well. It was just people just kind of, no, we will not, we won't stand for this. Do you think that fans that actually don't realise how much power they have?
Yeah, I think to an extent, I think they benefited from how unbelievably incompetent the people organising that. So, like, it is the most like botched job. You actually look at what they did. You're like, did you like talk to anyone about like this rollout? So yeah, I think that's true. I think, as I say, it's just it's when it's something they feel so passionate about and they're willing. With the Super League, fans weren't losing anything in a way by doing that. You know, they were doing it to preserve the Premier League, which is something they like, and all domestic football, you know, the whole pyramid. With a World Cup, you're asking people to, you know, do you want to not watch, do you want to not go? But people love the World Cup. So it's really hard. But they do definitely have a lot of power. And I think we see that with managerial sackings. I think fans do sometimes have, some might say have too much power. I mean, I think it's really interesting. You look at Arsenal, who are doing so well now. They went on an awful run under Arteta in lockdown, but there were no fans in the grounds. And I honestly think if there had been, I think Arsenal lost 5 games and drew 2 out of 7. I think there's a really good chance Arteta would have been sacked then. But there weren't fans, and so he sort of got away with it. Fans are really influential.
Yeah. Well, I'll end on in a moment, just to give you a moment to think about your greatest moment as a football fan. But just sticking on the idea of the future of football fandom, I think it's really telling that when Chelsea were taken over by Todd Boehly, he bought it for 4 or 5 billion pounds. And he bought it thinking it was cheap, because essentially he thinks that football fans, the football fandom is just going to grow and grow around the world, that a £5 billion asset is going to grow to something like 10 billion. These are American guys who are coming into the game thinking you're undervaluing your product so much. What do you think might be the future of football fandom, considering there will be just actually still a finite amount of space? You can only cram in 60,000 people to most Premier League grounds, but there's going to be millions watching around the world. What do you think the future of football fandom might entail?
Might look like? Good question, actually. I think maybe I would like to just say at this point, I don't know if it's to do with fandom, but I watched the Disney documentary about Wrexham. Yeah, and I thought, I can see that happening more. I can see, maybe, I don't know if it'll be American actors, but I do think maybe American investors are going to get more interested in the football game. And then I think in return, soccer's going to grow even more in USA, even though it is already. And then maybe, I guess, it'll be easier to watch football at home, and maybe it'll become cheaper to watch football at home. I don't know how much it is to watch a game on Sky Sports, but whenever I've looked, I've been a bit like,
it's pretty expensive.
Yeah, so I feel like maybe that might happen where it becomes a bit more accessible for you to watch a game at home. And then hopefully the women's game grows more, it gets stronger, people enjoy it more money gets invested, and women's games become hopefully more busier and packed out. And women athletes also get that same kind of buzz around. Like Jack Grealish is like the star. Like, could we get that with a female footballer who becomes like, and also a star, not just because she's attractive, but because she is, good at football.
Yeah. And Charlie, what do you think the future of football?
Well, I agree. I think the women's game, there's so much scope there. That's where there's suddenly, you look up and there's a huge amount of road for that to grow. I think it will become increasingly polarised and club specific. I think more and more the model of kind of general football chat that Match the Day kind of is a law unto itself and still works, but I think increasingly fans are focused so much on their own team that I think there's going to be even more of that fans to a large extent only really want to read about their own team, and I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, but I just think you're seeing more and more of that a lot of fans I know they won't tune in to games in the way they used to. Like your example at the beginning, I think that's actually becoming less common, because a lot of fans would rather just, instead of watching a mid-table Premier League game, would rather be sort of reading about their own team or listening to a podcast about their own team. So I think that's the way it's going, but it may change.
Yeah. I did say finally we'll end on your greatest moment as a football fan. So Safa, what would you consider to be your best moment?
I'll have to go for Liverpool AC Milan in my grandma's living room when I was about
2005.
Yeah, and I was screaming the house down. I was screaming the living room down. I think that's the first time my grandma had seen me like that, but I was screaming up, down, everywhere, just... that was probably it, yeah.
And do you think that moment kind of kept you in? I know
I love Steven Gerrard.
Yeah,
I was Steven Gerrard's biggest fan, and he was the only reason why you'd support Liverpool was Steven Gerrard. Like, throughout everything, he stayed, and that's why to this day I'm a Liverpool fan. Yeah.
And Charlie, finally, what's
I think like the whole Euro '96 was when that was, for lots of people my age, that was such a unifying thing and completely captured the imagination. and we beat Spain, and the game was at Wembley to see. We actually won a penalty shootout, which was kind of amazing. And then we went ahead against Germany, and I kissed my little sister in just delight because we did not get on at that age. We do now. And I remember like getting that horrible grey kit. Like this fever went around. I like asked my mum on a complete flyer, like thinking she'd never say yes. Was like Brent Cross, like, could I get that? She's like, yeah. And it was just like everyone was so swept up with this sort of fever, I suppose. So yeah, that was kind of my first introduction, I think, to proper football obsession.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We will end it there. There's the bar's going to be open, and I just want to say thank you to Sapphire and Charlie. I want to end on just Charlie's book is fantastic. It's kind of a collection of commentary from down the years, but I wanted to end on one particular because I think it sums up a lot about not just one goal, but actually what football is all about for a lot of fans. And it's about a Paul Scholes goal by Peter Drury, who is essentially the poet laureate of football commentary. And he says, "Oh, that's divine, absolutely divine. What a lovely, lovely goal. And that will do them. Glorious, to die for, to smile about, just to enjoy." I think that's really what it's all about. Thank you very much.